What's up, YouTube? Zachary Michaels here. I'm an actor, and this is An Actor Reacts. And today we'll be talking about Hamilton. And let me just say, it's hard for me to believe that any of the Founding Fathers had this much flavor. Let's discuss. Now, before we get started, if you're new to my channel, which again, most people probably are because it's brand new, be sure to hit that subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and leave a comment below. And just in case anyone didn't read the full title, we will be talking spoilers in this review, but the show is kind of based on history, so I guess you've kind of had since 1776 to find this stuff out. But admittedly, I'm pretty sure I remember writing a paper on Alexander Hamilton while in school, and I was learning a lot of new stuff throughout this show. But anyway, Hamilton is a 2015 Broadway musical written by and starring Lin Manuel Miranda, inspired by the 2004 biography, Alexander Hamilton, by Ron Chernow. It tells the story of the forgotten American founding father, Alexander Hamilton, and his ascent out of poverty and to power against the backdrop of the American War of Independence. On July 3rd, 2020, a recording starring the original Broadway cast premiered on Disney Plus for streaming. Now, without further ado, let's get into the good, the bad, and see what I rated this show. Or film now, I guess. So, for me, the most obvious good point in Hamilton is Lin Manuel Miranda. The guy's just a creative genius. I just can't believe some of the things that comes out of his mind. It really amazes me. And he's just crazy talented. Like, he's got such a unique voice and energy that it's just so enticing to watch him on screen. And he honestly just seems like a genuinely kind and nice person, you know? And that can be really rare in Hollywood. So I went into the show pretty much blind. Like, I hadn't heard any of the music or seen any clips, or I obviously knew what the plot of the show was, the founding fathers establishing America. But other than that, I was going in pretty blind. One, because the show got so big that it kind of turned me off from it. Generally, when things are huge in pop culture, when I watch them, I'm not as big of a fan as everyone else. And then partly because I was such a big fan of In the Heights that maybe I was a little bitter and didn't want to watch Hamilton because I was upset, I guess, that In the Heights didn't get this much recognition. But In the Heights did get some recognition, you know, it won a bunch of Tonys and stuff, but as far as the mainstream goes, I think In the Heights was definitely overlooked, and I'm super excited for the movie that's coming out. I hope it really elevates the show or the recognition of the show. I'm upset that it had to be pushed back to 2021 though, but either way, whenever it comes out, I'm going to be there in the theater watching it because I love that show and I'm super excited for it. Okay, but moving on to some other good things. Oh, the entire cast, not just Lin Manuel Miranda, the entire cast was so good. Like, this show is basically all songs, so the whole show had to be like intensely choreographed. And the fact that they're able to keep that up for almost 3 hours and still give amazing energy and just amazing performances. I was just so like, wow, kudos to literally the entire cast. And I actually recognized a bunch of them from other stuff. There's Anthony Ramos. Obviously, I mentioned In the Heights. Anthony Ramos is going to be playing Usnavi in The Heights. And it was actually funny when they first announced that Anthony Ramos was going to play Usnavi. I was a bit nervous. One, because Lin is just such, like I said, he's such a unique talent and voice that I was like, that's going to be really hard to follow up. Because I've seen the touring cast of In the Heights, and the guy who played Usnavi was good, but it was like, he's no Lin. But I was nervous about it, especially because up to that point, the only thing I'd seen Anthony Ramos in was A Star is Born. And I was like, the gay guy from A Star is Born is going to play Usnavi? I now know that he's not actually gay and he was just playing a character, which kudos to you, because I totally believe that. And then I've also seen him in monsters and men now. So I see he's got I think he can bring off Usnavi well, especially after seeing him in Hamilton. He's got a nice flow, and he's got like a good swag to him. Do people still say swag? He's got a good swag to him. So I'm really excited to see him in the Heights and Usnavi, and watching the trailer. I think he pulled it off rather well. There was also Chris Jackson. Speaking of In the Heights again, Chris Jackson, who is Benny in the Heights. Chris Jackson is so freaking talented. That voice, man, is just crazy. Just amazing pipes. And I really enjoyed him as George Washington in this show. Like around that mark when George Washington was introduced, that's when the show really picked up for me, and I was like, oh, I'm into this. Oh, let me go back real quick. Anthony Ramos, poor Anthony Ramos, died twice in the same show. That was just a thought. I was like, oh gosh, this guy. Let's see, who else did I know? Oh, I knew Daveed Diggs. He was hilarious in this show. But I knew him from Blackish. He was great. I forget who he was playing in the first half, but he was super funny in that first half. And then he had just a lot of charisma as Thomas Jefferson in that second half. I also knew, Renee Goldsberry. Now, she was a highlight of the show for me. Like, again, the voice. Like, she has an amazing voice and just presence to her. I knew her, and she's in one of my favorite movies, Waves. She plays the mom, and she was great in that. If you haven't seen Waves, definitely go watch that. Love that movie. But she was amazing in that. And then I'd seen on Twitter that she was in this, so I was excited to see her. And then when she popped up, amazing. I was totally rooting for her and Hamilton to get together the whole show. Who else? Oh, Jonathan Groff. I know him from Glee, and he's also in another one of my favorite musicals, Spring Awakening. And he wasn't that big of a role in this show, but his few little parts I found hilarious. And I wouldn't say scene stealer, because his scenes were like by himself, but every time he was on screen, I definitely enjoyed his and his songs are just hilarious. And the spitting, I saw like on Twitter, like apparently he said that wasn't intentional. Like, I'd never seen him spit that much in Glee or in Spring Awakening, like the recordings that I've seen of it. But apparently that's just how he sings. But it was like a lot of spit, like a crazy amount of spit. And I saw that people said that they thought that was because, King George was a spitter, but apparently it wasn't intentional. But that's just nasty. Okay, Leslie Odom Jr. Now, I've seen, like, I knew that some of these other people were in it because I've seen people talking about them on Twitter. But I feel like people aren't talking about Leslie Odom Jr. enough. Like, I really, like, Leslie Odom Jr. as Aaron Burr, and, like, he was kind of like a narrator of the story, MC of the story as well. Like, I really enjoyed him. He was, honestly, probably my favorite part of the show. Like, completely honest. Like, and I think Aaron Burr was probably maybe even my favorite character in the show. And I think that maybe people aren't talking about Leslie or Aaron Burr because he's kind of the villain in the show. Like, he's the one who kills Hamilton. And maybe not even necessarily villain, but like, competition against Hamilton. Like, Hamilton maybe wasn't the biggest fan of him, so maybe audiences aren't the biggest fan of him. But I found Aaron Burr a really sympathetic character. At least how he's portrayed here. I don't know about the real guy, but the way that Leslie Odom Jr. portrays him in this show, I found him really sympathetic. And honestly, I kind of felt like I could relate to him. Not in the, like, not standing for anything aspect, because I'd like to think that I stand for what I believe in. But more so like I get the mentality that he was in, that like, because I'm an introvert naturally. Like when I'm out in the world, I'm pretty introverted until I'm like really really comfortable. But most people that interact with me think I'm really shy and quiet, right? And that's kind of what Burr was. And it's hard to be that in a world when you're chasing after something so big, like me chasing after an acting career. That's something so huge, and it's kind of hard to do that when you're an introverted person, because so much of this business is like schmoozing and interacting with people. And it's especially hard when you have someone like a Hamilton, who's big and loud and outspoken and charismatic, and people love them. And it's hard when you're like, I'm just as talented as them, I'm just as knowledgeable as them, but I'm not getting these looks because I'm more reserved. And they're bigger and louder, and maybe even in some cases you're like, you're even more equipped than them, but they have such big energy that they're overshadowing you. And with Burr and Hamilton, it was like Hamilton overshadowed Burr the entire show, and Burr just kind of dealt with it. And then there came this moment when Burr is finally getting his recognition. He's about to be, he could be president. He could be the next president. And then the person who's always overshadowed him, like, puts one final nail in the coffin and endorses his enemy instead of Burr, who he's been kind of friendly with. Also, after Burr says, you inspired me, and he still doesn't support him. Like, I haven't experienced that exact situation, but I understand Burr's hurt. And it made me really feel for that character. I don't know how I feel about him murdering him, but I definitely, or I guess it wasn't murder because it was a duel. Hamilton knew what he was getting into, but I'm still on the fence about all that, but I get Burr's feelings. And I generally just always root for the underdog, which Burr was in this show. But that's my little rant on Burr. But anyway, who else? Also Burr, he had one of my favorite lines in the show, that I'm a trust fund, baby, you can trust me. Like, I just thought that was so clever. So also with all the duels in this show, it had me wondering, like, why does no one duel anymore? Like, I mean, I get it, it's killing, but I feel that's so cool. Like, you could just set up a duel and maybe somebody will die, and then like your beef is just squashed. Interesting thought. Apparently, I think somebody said you can still do them in New Jersey, or maybe that was just in the show. Maybe I'm confusing real life and old times and the show. But in the show they did say everything's legal in New Jersey. But that's interesting. Oh, and then a character, he wasn't in it much, but I believe the guy who played Hercules Mulligan, I really enjoyed. I think that's the character. And like, in doing research, it looks like he also played James Madison in the second act, which I didn't pick up on. If that is the same guy, but I mean, it would make sense because like Daveed Diggs and Anthony Ramos both played second roles. And side note, why do they do that? Is it just because Broadway shows like to have smaller casts? I don't know, but anyway, I really enjoyed that guy. I thought he had the best delivery in the show, like out of everyone. At least in that, like, he was good in the second half too, but at least in that first half, like when he was Mulligan, I was super intrigued. Like, his delivery was amazing. I would try to say his name, but I butchered enough names in my 365 days review, so I'm just gonna display his name on the screen and say, kudos, my guy. I'm pretty sure he's the guy who plays Hercules Mulligan. Like, I wrote, I like the black dude in the green coat and beanie in my notes. And then I wrote, the rough dude's delivery is A1. Like, he just really, every time he was rapping and on screen, I was like, I'm into this. I'm pretty sure that's who it was though. So kudos to him. He had a rather small part in that first act, but I was intrigued by every word. Another good in this show, the songs. Now, it was kind of hard for me to differentiate the songs just because, like I said, I went into this kind of blind. And so I just hopped in not knowing anything. And it's like pretty much all singing. So it was hard for me to know like what song is what. Like I like the overall vibe of the songs. I love when like hip hop is being infused into like classical Broadway things. Like that's why I really loved In the Heights, because they infused hip hop and they infused salsa and other Spanish music, and that just made for a great time watching the show. And kind of the same thing with this show. I love the overall music, although it was hard for me to kind of differentiate songs. But like Rewind, or I guess it was called Satisfied. I found that out after, but that song by Renee, my favorite song in the whole show. And I was wondering, like I just kind of assumed that Renee would be the one who was Hamilton's wife. And then I was confused when she like introduced him to her sister. But then at the wedding, when she goes into this song, I'm like, oh, she loves him, but she thinks she can't be with him. I was so intrigued, and that song just amazing. Again, Renee's voice just out of this world. That song was a jam. Like that's the only song that I've listened to like after the show. Like I went and listened to that song because a couple times, just because I was like, this is such an amazing number. And again, that choreography, the way that they had to stage this whole show is amazing to me. And I love the drama, man. Like I said, I was rooting for her in Hamilton. Um, I also really loved that ending song by his wife. I don't recall her name, but for me, she kind of played the background the entire show. But that final moment was a final moment. And that song really kind of solidified me really liking this show, because it really got me inspired. And I was touched by that song. Like, like what's going to be my legacy when I'm gone? Who's going to tell my story? Like, I really love that song. And I also thought it was amazing highlighting all the things that, oh, Eliza, that's her name, highlighting all the things that Eliza was able to do in her life, and the legacy that she was able to leave for her and Hamilton. It was really great. And in my notes while I was watching, I wrote, who tells your story is really touching. I want to have a legacy of being my true authentic self and reaching my goals. Like it really had me inspired, especially the end to this really big show. I really enjoyed all of King George's songs. Like I said, like he was a highlight to me. And like just the lyrics, like the I show you I love you by killing your friends and family, like hilarious. um I really enjoyed that, the rap battles and the cabinet meetings, and that like that first table rap at the very beginning. Those are all the moments where I was like, the founding fathers did not have this much flavor. Like I'm sure they were super dull. They could not have had, they obviously weren't rapping, but like they just couldn't have had this much flavor, because I was so intrigued by all them. um Oh, I really like George Washington intro song. Like I said, when Washington was introduced, that's when the show really picked up for me, and that first song was really great. The whole cheating song, when like he finds out that he's being blackmailed by the woman he's cheating with husband, that like, I'm the husband of the woman you decided to fuck. Like I loved that. That was hilarious. I don't know what Lafayette song was, but I wrote that down in my notes with an exclamation point. So if you know the show, you probably know what Lafayette song is, but I apparently really enjoyed that. And I really liked No One Else Was in the Room when it happened. That was, again, another moment where I was bobbing along. I really liked the story that was being told in that song. And then lastly, of course, that main kind of theme that kept reoccurring in this show, the not giving away my shot, young, scrappy, and hungry, like not gonna miss my shot. Like I really just like that rhetoric, because again, I'm somebody who's trying to be an actor in Hollywood, and I can't give away my shot. I gotta be young, scrappy, and hungry, and just fight for what I believe in. So that was just really inspiring for me. I love that theme just kept coming up again and again and again. And then something else I really like. I have a lot of positives. I really did enjoy this show. I'm glad that it wasn't just another pop culture thing that I was rolling my eyes at because people overhyped it. But the story, they made something that could be really boring into something that was interesting, and I was learning. I was learning and being entertained at the same time, and I think that's something really cool that only a few things are able to do. So I really commend the show on that. And I also just think Hamilton's a really interesting character. Like, all the things that he had to deal with was coming from like a smaller, coming from poverty and becoming such a powerful person. I just find that really interesting. And like his battle with coming from poverty and like not really having a dad. And like one of my favorite scenes in the show was when he's getting so angry at because Washington keeps calling him son, and he's like, I am not your son. Like, that scene just really like sucked me in. I was like, ooh, this is good story. And then just the drama, man, all the drama that they added in. Didn't add in, all the drama that happened that they touched on. I really enjoyed, like Angelica Hamilton, or Hamilton's affair, and the cover up, and the blackmail, and the writing the tell-all pamphlet. Which, why did he do that? That really, I was like, Hamilton, are you dumb? Did you think this would help you being so transparent? But I like that he did, because now we know that stuff and we get to look back on it. But I was so really intrigued by Hamilton and just that the overall story. And then my final good point about the show was black and brown faces. Like, being a young black actor in Hollywood, it's like it can be discouraging. Like, things are changing so much for the better, but it can be discouraging. So it was just really good to see black and brown faces in such prominent roles in something that was so popular. Like, that shows that we can lead anything, and it can be big, it can make money, it can be a staple, and that was really inspiring to me. And then just kind of the parallel of black and brown people, fighting against an unjust system and coming out on top and changing the world and the government for the better. The black and brown people saying that we will not stand for this. We're going to make a better tomorrow. I just love that parallel with everything that's going on right now in the world. Like, I love seeing that, because like, yeah, no, like, this is this is what is going to happen right now. Like, we're like, no, we're not standing for this anymore. We're going to make sure change happens, whether the majority likes it or not. So that was just something really great to see. So those are all my good points. Now let's get into the not so good things. Okay, so my first kind of bad thing, I guess, about Hamilton is that it's just nonstop songs. Like, I'm a fan of musicals. I'm not as like die hard for musicals as most theater kids are, but I do enjoy them and I like seeing them. But I like for my musicals to have some speaking, like, I like a break from the songs in the middle and see a spoken scene, and which leads them into a song, and then a spoken scene which leads them into another song. But this show is just, there's not a word that's said that isn't rapped or sung or done over music, and I just find that really daunting sometimes. It can be so draining. It reminds me of like Les Mis, which was a chore for me to get through, and I like some of the songs in Les Mis, but it's just hard, because especially with that show, because it's just like depressing material, and it just but anyway, we're talking Hamilton, and this show, it didn't suffer like Les Mis did, because this show is really high energy, and I guess that kind of makes sense for this show, because the subject matter is so like, it could potentially get boring, that they have to keep it high energy the whole time, or the energy might drop and then the show would suffer. So I get that, but it's really daunting for me. Like, the show is almost 3 hours. So it felt just like a 3-hour song to me, you know? And that kind of leads me into my second thing. This show was almost 3 hours. Again, I like musicals, but I don't know if I want to watch something for 3 hours. Like, it just... And, like, I liked the show, but I found myself checking how much time was left many times. And every time I was like, wow, I still got 2 hours left. I still got an hour left. I still got 30 minutes left. That's really all I got to say on that one. It was just long. Like, and I don't even know necessarily what they would have cut. But I don't know. It felt long, and I enjoyed it, but I was feeling the time as I was watching through. Let's see what else. Oh, so in the show, this is a small thing. Like, they talk about battling a lot. Like, they talk about the battles that they won or lost in the War of Independence, right? But I would have liked to see some of that and not just have songs speaking about them. Like, I feel like they could have done, like, a cool choreographed number where they're, like, battling, although the show already is full of choreography, so that'd be another number that they have to figure out. But it's just, I would have really liked to see some of the battles personally. Like, that, I think that would have been really cool. Kind of like West Side Story. Yeah, kind of like West Side Story, where they, like, dance battle. Oh, they could have, like, done it like a hip-hop dance battle in this show. That would have been really cool. Yeah. And then the last thing that I have, like, I saw online prior to watching this show a lot of the backlash that it was getting. And I'm not as well versed in all that, but the points that I was reading online, I think there's definitely some valid criticisms of this show. Majorly what I'm seeing people say is, which I can agree to, is that this show is like a watered down version of history. And that's true. Like, I'm sure, like, I feel that, like, Hamilton and, like, Burr, or really all of these people were not as good as they are in the show. Like, you know, racism and slavery were very prominent during these times. And the show just kind of looks like it kind of overlooks them. I counted how many times slavery was mentioned in the show, and I think it's about 6 times, mostly from Anthony Ramos's character. And I know Hamilton brings it up when he's battling in that first battle with Thomas Jefferson. He's like, we know who's really doing the work. We know you have free labor and stuff. And I actually thought it was, like, clever and funny when he used it in the rap battle. But, like, for the most part, slavery was kind of overlooked in this show. But at the same time, I'm like, where would slavery have even fit into this show? Because, again, it is almost a 3-hour show, and I don't think they should have added anything more. And also, like, would I have even wanted slavery to be in this show? Because, like I said, the show's really watered down, and it's, like, high energy and, like, shiny, glossy Hollywood, and I wouldn't have really wanted slaves up on stage, like, you know, life is terrible, we're doing all the work, we're treated horrible. Like, that wouldn't have been it either. So I feel like either way, with this show as it is, like, he would have been criticized for including, like, a glossy version of slavery, but he's also being criticized for not really touching on it. And honestly, both criticisms are valid either way, because it's like, why does this history need to be shiny and palpable for all audiences anyway? Because, like, times weren't really that great back then. So, like I said, I'm not as well versed in all this, but all the criticisms that I read on the show are valid, and I think it looks like Lin Manuel Miranda agrees from what I've seen as far as his, like, responses go to the criticism. And I personally think it's really important that we never get too precious about anything, that, like, nothing is too big for criticism, you know? Like, nothing, like, anything garners criticism and should, because that's how we grow. Like, nothing is perfect. No one is perfect. Like, anything and everyone can be criticized. I think it just matters where that criticism is coming from. Is it coming from a place of hate? Is it coming from a place of evilness, or is it coming from a place of like trying to be constructive? Because maybe in the future, if Lin Manuel makes a show about something historical as well, he'll look at it from all aspects and then create a better show because of that. And while I did enjoy Hamilton, it's watered down. It's history was not this great. So I just think it's important that we be open to criticism on all things. So those are my bad. Honestly, I didn't have that many bad things about the show. I did enjoy it, and it honestly did live up to the hype. So I'm happy that I watched it. Now let's get into my rating. Okay, so I really enjoyed Hamilton, honestly. It's got an amazing cast. It was high energy. I love the music. I love that it infused hip hop into Broadway. And I think it translated really well into screen. And something I forgot to mention before, I really like the way that Hamilton was portrayed here. Like, I found myself really relating to him as far as like striving for something so big and so great, but kind of at the same time knowing that you'll never really be satisfied when you get there because you're always looking for something bigger and something greater. That's how I feel about myself and my career. I know that even when I get to where I want to be as an actor, I'm still not going to be satisfied because I'm going to be looking to what else I could do, what else I can accomplish. And I'm honestly okay with that. I find that I like that idea of just always striving for better, because that's how we grow as people and as artists. But the show, like I mentioned, the length of the show and the nonstop singing and being overly sanitized version of history did bring down the show some for me. But overall, my rating is still going to be pretty high. I'd give Hamilton an 8.5 out of 10, which is a good rating still. Like, it's a great show, but I think it accounts for the things that weren't quite perfect for me. And I just want to say, while I did enjoy Hamilton, I'm still team In the Heights. Like, I love that show. I'm always going to love that show. I'm so excited for the movie. And is there a recorded Broadway version of In the Heights? Because I'd love to see that as well. Just see that original Broadway cast on the like Broadway stage. Like, that would be amazing. Like I said, I've seen the touring cast and I've listened to the CD, but I'd love to see that original Broadway production. But anyway, that's all I got on Hamilton. I hope you liked my review. Leave a comment below. Let me know your thoughts on Hamilton and this review. Be sure to give this video a thumbs up, share it with your friends and family, and subscribe to my channel for more content like this. Thanks for stopping by. See y'all next time.